Hello and welcome to the 18th episode of the Fireside Chat. Today we'll be talking about the value of Gridcoin, where it comes from, and we all think it's a pretty big question. All perspectives are welcome. Fireside Chat is a get-together Gridcoin participants and any member from any community who wants to join us. We get together every Thursday, Gridcoin Discord server, 8 p.m. Eastern, midnight UTC. We discuss things, all things Gridcoin, blockchain, cryptocurrency, decentralization, education, leadership, technology. Oh man, I just railed that off so quick. I'm pretty proud of myself. It's hosted by myself, Jay Ringo, Goblin Popper.
Hello.
Who I hear is in a cabin this week.
Try not to get stabbed.
By a bear, hopefully. And I Like Chocolate is also a joyous host here with us.
Hey.
And you can tell he sounded. Did you get to listen to last week's episode, Chocolate?
No, I didn't.
Goblin did a perfect introduction as you. It was.
Oh, okay. What? How far into the recording is it?
It's just right in the beginning. He just says hello, like you said hello.
Oh, okay.
I've been practicing a lot, to be honest.
What did you say? Like, and here is the role of I Like Chocolate is, tonight going to be played by the Goblin Popper.
Yeah, I just changed my voice a little bit. Dropped a couple octaves, or excuse me, went up a little bit since I have a deep voice. It was a whole thing. I've been practicing for a week, knowing that this was going to happen.
It's good to have you back either way.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Before we get into the topic, every week we go over news in the Gridcoin world. So let's do that real quick. Big news this week is we won the vote for South Exchange, which means that we will be listed in the coming days and or weeks. We're not exactly sure what the time frame is like, but we are in contact with their administrators, and we'll keep you up to date as we know more. And shout outs for getting us on there. Go to Barton for setting up the poll. Jim did a donation. Barton did a donation. There were some community members who did donations. And then there is the legend, the Chicken Man, who did the big old donation for us, got us in the first place. So thank you to him. And we now have a Chicken Man emoji on our Discord. So come over and throw around the Chicken Mans. There was a competition to get that emoji made, and the winner is Nethlick. And Chicken Man also threw down some GRC for that competition. So, yeah, this Chicken Man is just throwing out goodies left and right. So thank you very much. Moving on, there was another State of the Network that came out on Monday. Take a look at that if you're interested in statistics or what have you. It's also sort of a news overview for the week. You can read those. They come out every 2 weeks. They're put together by myself and Perjan. And they basically just cover the news and stat. We have the proposal for the new GUI and funding for that GUI. That's still going until August 1st. The yeses are winning, but there is not enough vote weight to validate the poll yet. So if you have not voted, get out there and vote by August 1st. That's early next week, so do it soon. And Barton is threatening everyone with an all caps vote or else. He did send me a picture of a knife earlier. It was a pretty gruesome knife, so I'm pretty sure that's what the else is, so be careful, guys. And then we've got the Boink team challenges that are wrapping up tomorrow. No, last one ends on July 29th. That's number fields at home, so you can still crunch number fields at home and participate in that team challenge. The last challenge, which ended last week, was Milky Way at home. That one ended with Gridcoin in first place, but we're special. So second place, which is the technical first place, is Planet 3D Now. They were in second place. The Alliance Francophone was in third place, and Boink Australia was in fourth place. So congrats to those guys. We got a lot of crunching done in that challenge. And then in number fields, it's us in first place, Planet 3D Now in second place, SETI Germany in third place, and the Alliance Francophone in fourth. I think the Alliance placed in all three Boink challenges if this last one finishes with the current standings. So shout out to them for competing. We'll see you next time. And I think that is all the news we've got for Gridcoin specifics. Does anyone have anything else they want to bring up? All right, then we will, this is the section in the podcast where anyone can talk about anything anything they want. Wow. So yes, anyone have a topic they want to bring up before we get to the main topic?
Yeah, how about what I just wrote in the chat? How much longer until GPUGrid gets graylisted?
All right. GPUGrid, for those who aren't up to speed, is having some issues with their Windows tasks. Barton probably knows more about this than I do, actually. Do you, Barton?
Yeah, they had to shut down all their Windows work units because they had a problem with them. And when I last checked, they still had not found a solution. I've been monitoring their work availability score, which will determine if they drop low enough to be graylisted. All this is on GUK's graylisting, tracking site. Their work availability score is currently 0.24, but that's for yesterday's stats, so it hasn't pulled. It'll pull stats again in I think 6 hours. It's been dropping at a somewhat slow rate because they still have work for Linux. It's just whether it's going to hit the threshold. The threshold for graylisting is 0.1 work availability score, and from what it looks like, it doesn't look like it's going to get that low. So there can definitely be some discussions had about whether, maybe an exception needs to be made here or what. But as the rules stand, unless it hits 0.1 on that work availability score, using the existing graylisting rules, it will remain whitelisted. And again, it's at 0.24 now, or yesterday rather.
All right, yeah. I think this brings up a good point about, I think you said it, but whether we need to consider an exception for this project and maybe consider changes to the rules moving forward. This seems like something that could be abused by projects in the future, limiting work units to one platform or another. I'm not saying GPU does this in any way, but might be able to exploit that, get a bunch of people on the project, then kick Windows tasks off. Then anyone on Linux gets all the magnitude. But I think that's.
I'm checking the thread right now. If you give me a minute, let me just scan this thread to see if they updated on what their progress is. They posted last about 12 hours ago. One of the project administrators said in the thread, "We are working around the clock to restore Windows work units. Sorry for the delay. The problem is not easy to solve. We have confirmed that the one app, the CUDA 65 app, is okay, but we still are not releasing any work units because the other one is broken."
Well, that seems a bit silly not to release work units for one app when it could work.
I think it's because the CUDA 65 only works on certain GPUs, so they would effectively be saying only certain Windows machines could get work, whereas now it's just none of them. I don't know. Maybe they're trying to be fair, but I don't know.
Still think it's a bit silly, but it's their project. All right.
But yes, it is being worked on, but yeah, again, it's been nearly a week now. Actually, has it been a week? I don't know, maybe 6 days. And they are still working on it. They know what the problem is, so that's a start.
Out of curiosity, what's the current number of gray-listed, whitelisted, and blacklisted, if we have any blacklisted projects?
Well, there are currently 23 whitelisted, and there's one gray-listed. No, wait, two, sorry, gray-listed. Because technically drug discovery was never removed, so it's still gray-listed. But for all intents and purposes, drug discovery is kind of like not on the list at all.
Little addendum, it's 10 days ago. I started my thread about the issue 10 days ago with GPUGrid.
That's 2 times 5, so I think that counts as a bingo mark.
Oh God.
Exactly. No, so and I'm assuming the only way to really fall out of go into I'm assuming, do we even have a blacklist? And if we do, I'm assuming it's just a project is pretty much done.
A blacklist, which is just effectively not being on the whitelist, like the lack of white or gray is black. It's not like written out. You could list all the BOINC projects that aren't either white or gray and call that a blacklist if you want, but it's not an official thing.
I mean, there's all these other colors in the rainbow we can pick from, but all right.
I mean, yes, projects that are concluded are definitely, things that are never going to be added again. A good example is POG Skynet, which finished, a month and a half ago. They're finished, shut down. They did all their work, so they're not coming back unless they decide to, wake the project up again for some reason.
Gotcha.
Anything else?
I could add, of the 2 gray listed I mentioned, I said drug discovery was one, but that's been gray listed for so long. The other one is Einstein, which is still being held back due to GDPR issues. The fix is in the works. It's just how best to deploy the fix so as to protect the credentials that they have entrusted us with. We don't obviously want to publish them for everyone because that would defeat the purpose of credential-based data access. But at the same time, we want to be as decentralized as possible in distributing the stats.
Question, how long can a project stay on the gray list before it gets kicked off entirely?
There is no rule. Good example, drug discovery's been on the gray list for probably, I don't even know, 3-4 months now. Really, unless someone starts a poll to remove it, it'll just stay on the gray list indefinitely.
And why was drug discovery on the gray list again?
They just stopped producing work and didn't produce any since. And their admin their whole team just stopped answering anything on their forums.
Yeah, I feel like I kind of need to flesh this out a little bit more, I guess, in my head. But I would think that a decent sized gray list would be a little bit healthy, just so that we have things that we have vetted out that we can eventually contribute to and add to the whitelist, and still be working with, because it's a sign of having vetted projects that are just on hold for the moment. It's not necessarily.
Well, if you go to GUK's Graylist site, he tracks every BOINC project he can get stats for, and there are tons on there that aren't officially graylisted, but could be possible future projects, and he tracks them and keeps up their work availability scores, their rate of work unit distribution, their uptime. He keeps all that information in the event that they do become likely candidates. We have all that information back. Hold on, Nathaniel's asking for a link. Let me pull that up. There, I just posted the link in the chat there. So you can see there's a category for calculated status, which uses the calculated status uses the process that's outlined on the process page to determine what it should be. And then is the project suitable for Gridcoin is like a manual override in the case where the one on the left doesn't tell the full story. So for instance, by the metrics, some projects like SETI shouldn't be listed, but they're whitelist override because SETI doesn't export total credit. So the stats get messed up. So there's a couple projects like that with manual override. I know SETI and I believe World Community Grid have manual overrides because they don't export stats like the other ones do.
Getting back to the drug discovery thing, since it's been on the gray list for so long, and you're saying the admins aren't even responding anymore, why aren't we just kicking them off the gray list?
Well, there has to be a poll. Someone would have to make a poll just because that's in the protocol for whitelisting, and any whitelist addition or removal requires a poll.
Yeah, so if we kick them off, then we would have to worry about a poll to get them on whitelisting. So it kind of goes back to why I said gray listing is almost a little bit healthy in that it's more things that have been approved to be whitelisted and can flow into the whitelist as they get healthy again. So I think the only requirement for staying in the gray list should.
I think in theory, this sounds nice, but if the admins aren't even responding anymore, how do we know that when they do get back, that they didn't just hand it over to somebody else who's just going to do something completely different that might not even be in the spirit of what we're trying to do?
Well, with drug discovery, it's kind of on its last strike, so to speak, because drug discovery was whitelisted once. Then this is all before the gray list even existed. It was removed due to lack of work, and then the project came back and was added again. So a lot of people feel like if we remove it this time, it's gone for good. It's kind of like, it's been given, a second chance and then no third chance. And I just checked, it's actually been gray listed for 5 months. So my sense of time is very off.
So Net, what you're saying though is a good point. And I actually think there is something in the proposal for the gray list that GUK put together that says after X amount of time, the project is removed from the gray list. I am going to look for it as we continue talking here.
I think 6 months would be a reasonable time frame for that. And frankly, I think it should be a condition that the admins or moderators at least stay in touch with us. Because when they just completely drop off the face of the earth, we don't know, they could have handed it off to somebody else.
Yeah, that's a very good catch there.
Yeah, but I mean, our super big projects, do admins for those keep in touch with us? Like for World Community Grid? I don't know, but are people for World Community Grid, like admins for that, actually communicating with Gridcoin?
They have more people. I wouldn't say admins, but definitely their support staff. I know during the whole GDPR incident, they had support staff updating, not necessarily us, but the community on a really every 2 to 3 day basis on what the lawyers were doing and how it was going.
Yeah, I didn't mean it like it has to be an admin, just somebody from the project that's willing to talk with us.
Yeah, like if you email the project, someone should get back to you within like a week or something, just to make sure they're still there. And even if they're just saying, no, we're not doing whatever you want, but just know that there's someone we could contact, right?
If there isn't a rule already, we could just make a poll. Should a project be removed from the gray list after 6 months without work units? Yes, no, abstain, the usual.
Write a proposal, go make it.
I think it's there. I can't find it on GitHub, but
I love how that comment button is literally just making fun of poor people.
Yeah, but I could make it. I mean, I'd appreciate Jaringle's help to make sure I phrase everything right, but I'm not averse to it.
No, I didn't mean that in a way to make fun of people who don't have a sufficient balance. There are plenty of people who, if you go to and say, hey, I wrote up this poll proposal and it's like reasonable and not crazy, and I think people would actually like vote and care about this, they will say, okay, I'll make the poll for you. You've basically done all the work already.
Yeah, and first, let's message GUK and make sure that we are just not missing something in one of the poll or one of the issues on GitHub about how it's removed.
Yeah, definitely. He would know better than anyone.
And other than that, you don't need to make it pretty. I would be more than happy to help you phrase it if you just write down the basic idea. That's the hardest part, honestly, taking a thought, putting it on paper, even if it's not pretty. Rearranging it so it looks pretty and is understandable. To me, at least, not. I'm good at it. I can help. That goes for anyone with a proposal. Whether I agree with it or not, I'll help you. Write your proposals. I really wanted to swear during that sentence. Let's move on from the whitelist, gray list. Does anyone else have a subject?
Or are we going to talk about the value of Gridcoin?
Yeah, if no one else does anything, we can jump into the main topic. No, this is not off track. Barton is typing off track, like being snippy in text right here. This is the section we're wrapping up right now, but this section of the podcast is specifically for off track subjects. So someone had a question about the whitelist, so you can talk about that for a while. You can bring in.
It can't be off track. I'm not near trains right now.
Oh.
I know. I'm not sleeping well at night. I'm missing it.
So, main topic for today is the value of Gridcoin, where it comes from, and yeah, we've talked about this a lot in text. I think we've probably talked about it on this chat before, but it is a question that a lot of crypto communities get asked: where does your value come from? And it's an interesting question during this most recent cycle because there were these things called utility tokens, where the answer was. It turned into like, well, you can use this token on this platform to do this thing. It's like, all right, that's neat. Before ICOs, before Ethereum really took off with smart contracts, all there were blockchains. And when anyone asked that question, what's the value of your cryptocurrency? The answer was just, it's a cryptocurrency. It's a distributed ledger that is decentralized. It is based on network value. The stronger the network, the more valuable the currency minted by that network. There's no banks involved. There's no middleman. The things you can do with a decentralized currency based on a protocol that is rewarded, and that currency is rewarded for X, Y, or Z, are endless. So when we are asked that question now, a lot of people expect the answer to be like, well, you use Gridcoin to buy computing power. That's not the case. You don't use Gridcoin to buy computing power. We are still, in my view at least, and this will kick it off, and then I'll let anyone else chime in, we are still very much that old blockchain distributed ledger sort of value system. We're not a utility token. So that is where I think our value is. Our value is still in the network. We're a protocol, and that protocol, as with any currency protocol, blockchain or not, has human aspects to it. So all of us here add value to the network. All the BOINC projects add value to the network. What we do adds value to the network. So our scientific ethos, our altruistic endeavors, insert big word here, all that sort of intangible stuff adds value to what Gridcoin is as a network. But unlike other non-blockchain currency protocols, we have a blockchain protocol, a literal set of code that anyone can read, edit, learn from, and manipulate. And that also adds value to our network. That adds value to every blockchain network. So that is where I think our value comes from. In a word, the network. Does anyone else have thoughts, disagree, agree, add to, what have you?
I think I agree to a large extent. Since currently Gridcoin can't be used to purchase too much, I think a lot of our value is more of like an intrinsic kind of value. It's not really tied. Like our real value, yes, the market value right now is what it's being traded on via exchanges, and that's determined by what people are willing to pay for it. But given that there's no assets behind it, there's no real, nothing that you can buy with it. It's for the most part, it's fairly arbitrary, other than just kind of how it's used for us to be kind of perceived by in terms of the rest of the crypto market. But yeah, I think as we start to get more accepted on more exchanges and we can actually use it for more stuff, possibly use it for processing or so on, I think we'll have a lot more value. But yeah.
I think as far as value price goes, as Gridcoin develops and matures, I think that it'll be pretty closely tied to the cost of the electricity to run BOINC for that amount of Gridcoin. Right now, since we have so many people who are just running BOINC that would be running BOINC anyway, this value is not met by any means under most circumstances. But as we go forward, that's going to be a defining factor of how much someone's going to be willing to sell their Gridcoin for after they've been mining for an extended period of time.
So yeah, so I do agree. Electricity is obviously going to be a big factor. I do think we also always have to make sure we kind of always think of hardware degradation costs, right? I mean, technically your hardware is degrading as you're chugging that, so that small little amount needs to also be added in.
Absolutely. Depreciation of hardware is non-negligible. But I guess my point is the price of Gridcoin will probably naturally tend toward the cost of Gridcoin, like cost of minting.
So I want to tie the idea to US dollars, fiat currencies. People have tried to, first of all, there's the distinction you made between value and price. They are very different things. Price is what you sell the thing for. Value is, it's like trying to define good or bad. You can't really define value. It's a thing that, or what you use it for, the thing you made, that sort of stuff. But with fiat currency, people have tried to define the value or the price of a currency based on like velocity of money, GDP, debt, all these things, and none of them work because you just can't define value in that way. People do it with Bitcoin. They try to tie the price of Bitcoin to the cost of electricity, the block halving expectations, all this stuff. But what it seems to be is that most of this stuff is all about trust and faith in a network, more than any tangible thing. For example, shells have been used as currency, beads, things that just, what? That's a currency? Just because there's this contract in society that says this is the protocol that we believe in, and therefore this is the currency of, or because this is the currency of this protocol, that currency has value. It all seems to boil down to the concept of a network and less about the tangible stuff. When it comes to price, you might be more, I might agree with you more in terms of more tangible things factoring into price, but that's never been the case for the US dollar or for a fiat currency. So why this sudden shift in how currency works?
I will also add, I think it's very important to kind of make a distinction as to how we're talking about the word trust, because it can mean something a little different in fiat as well as in crypto, right? The reason that Bitcoin really has a decent value to it, right, is because there is trust and there is confidence in its users that the algorithm will not be broken, the encryption will not be broken, and duplicate values will not be created, right? That is their trust in that system. And that is true for a lot of other cryptocurrencies. There is a trust that the network will continue to support that. In terms of like a fiat system, right? In terms of trust, right? When you sit in a cab or you go out and you go to buy something, I have to trust that they will accept my money, right? And I think we've all probably been in a situation where you go to hand a cab driver cash and he's like, no, I only take card. And in that moment, that cash is technically worthless in your situation.
Yes, it's a great example.
Yeah, so just I just want to make sure that having thought about it a lot, just to try and at least give J Ringo's examples a lot more credit than the rambles of a madman. I've tried to come up with at least some situation where I think the use of the words you're using are valid, but I think the comparisons have to be flushed out a little bit better, just because the kind of trust is different. But I agree with you that trust is a proper word.
Well, in that example you brought up, the cab driver is saying, I don't trust that protocol of the US dollar. I trust the protocol of the credit card.
Well, it's not even trust the protocol. It's not even like I don't trust that that's money. I don't want to accept it, right? It's not that he doesn't believe that's real cash. That's just not something he wants, right? And so if you have to trust that other people will want it, right? I've been places. I go to a local. There's a local pub near me. They don't take anything but cash. Will not. Like if you walk in with your credit card and you try to pay for like $300 bill, will not accept it. Like they will tell you go use your credit card on the machine over there and bring us cash, right? And they've been around for like 100 years, and they know for some reason they don't even get a square. They don't. So you have to trust that someone will want either your fiat or your credit or whatever. So yeah. So anyway,
and the ATM's always outside, like a block away. It's raining. There's a dog there. Sorry.
No, it has a massive fee on it and everything. I swear it's like a little Ponzi scheme. But anyway, it's still a nice place. You just have to remember to bring cash. Point being, right, there is trust. And so I wanted to add validity to your statement, J Ringo. I did want to do that.
And what you're describing is a network, though, and I appreciate it. You gave a great example of what I was describing. But that's a network. When there are a large number of people that all believe in the same thing, that all trust the same protocol, that's a network. And that's what gives value to a currency. And we, as a cryptocurrency, as a blockchain, happen to also have distributed ledger technology that adds a level of, adds the ability to trust a trustless system. You know, because the fiat system, the US dollar, as an example again, it's the same thing. A bunch of people agreeing that we trust this protocol. But when you ask a lot of people, particularly in crypto world, do you actually trust the US dollar? They say no, it's the central bank and all the banks, and then there's debt involved, and who knows what's actually happening behind the scenes. But we have to trust it. We have to use this currency. So blockchain is the exact same idea, except without that central bank, without these banks left, right, and center, without these middlemen who we have to put our trust in. We trust the code, and we're able to create a currency out of a trusted system, which the value, the way that the, what's it called when something just, the emergent property of value in the currency is from the same place. It's the network of a bunch of people agreeing together.
I agree, but I think that one element you have to consider is that, if you take the U.S. dollar system, for example, like it or not, the trust, or in some cases, the lack thereof, is reinforced by activity on the network. And I'm referring to the U.S. dollar system as a network. It is, even if it has a central arbiter. So for the purposes of this discussion, it really is irrelevant whether that, you've got a central bank managing it or whether it's a distributed network from a protocol perspective. People's trust of the U.S. dollar increases when they conduct transactions with it, and those transactions work. And when they don't work, it decreases. So I think one of the challenges you guys have heard me with this theme before, but one of the challenges we have in cryptocurrency is, in fact, the transaction rate for commerce transactions is really in reality very low, which the transition from an investment to a currency, this is fine, is one that we're going to have to go through. And because eventually I think we all want our Gridcoin to be used for transactions, money transactions, rather than just as an investment vehicle. Any comments on that?
Yeah, I think what you're describing is right on the money there, and but it's so.
I'll give it a
Thanks,
pity
chocolate.
if that makes you happy. I'll give it a pity.
But it's the Bitcoin Cash Bitcoin debate that's happening right now in terms of, and also actually EOS and Ethereum debate. How many transactions can you perform on the network? Which is more secure?
Well, there is a couple of additional layers that are being introduced now, right?
Like Lightning Network and
the like. Yes.
Yeah, and they're all trying to solve what Jim is describing, which is velocity of money. When you watch someone from Bitcoin Cash and someone from Bitcoin Core debate, a lot of the conversation will revolve around commerce transaction, which one is more capable to perform more transactions and at a lower cost. So the Bitcoin Cash proponent will use what happened in December in Bitcoin Core as a sort of an attack against Bitcoin Core because the fees went really high. There was congestion on the blockchain, and they say that is bad. Bitcoin Core says, well, you're right, it was harder to send transactions, but it's not about the number of transactions you send. It's about the substance of those transactions. And this is a very bad way to summarize Keynesian and Austrian economics. One is Keynesian is what we live in, where they define value based on how many transactions are in the protocol. And Austrian, this is not Marx, Barton, I'm sorry. Austrian says it's not the number, it's the quality over quantity sort of argument. So the question I'm coming to with all this is, do we really need a high number of transactions to make something valuable? I agree that we need secure transactions and a number of transactions. That does not exist in the Gridcoin blockchain. But do we need to compete with Bitcoin to be the main transaction ledger, so to speak? Or do we just need transactions that are hyper-specific for purpose A, B, or C, transactions of substance versus transactions of quantity?
I mean, I think it's important to have a core purpose or use, right? I mean, I don't think it's a good. I don't think it's smart to have Gridcoin go out and I've mentioned this before in other episodes. I don't think it's smart for Gridcoin to go out and try to compete against Bitcoin as the everything crypto, right? Just use Gridcoin to buy bread. Sure. Like I don't think that's as realistic, or I don't think that's as smart, because that's not really where I think our development or where the community would want to take it. But I think, to be completely honest, more to the first question you had, I think it's more important to have number of transactions than a specific dollar value or volume of questions of transactions. Simply just because I think activity. Yeah. So sorry. So I think it's more important to see more activity than it is to see dollar value in transactions, simply because I mean, we could fulfill dollar value by having a couple whales going back and forth and say, look how healthy we are. We have tens of thousands of dollars moving every day, right? That doesn't prove anything. Saying that we have 2 million users going back and forth every day is more important. Saying that we are active and we're healthy and people use it, right? It's kind of like any social media platform, or really anything. You don't really talk about how much you're making per user. You talk about how many users are on the platform, right? We're healthy.
You're gone again.
It doesn't like when I hold it down very long, so I have to keep my monologue short. But yeah, I got my point across.
All right. To clarify, substance isn't necessarily dollar value, dollar amount. If we were, say, a transaction ledger to bring it back to what you said in the beginning, actually, instead of having Gridcoin be go out and buy bread with Gridcoin, what if it's go out and buy scientific supplies with Gridcoin? So our currency is our transactions of substance are transactions that focus on a specific niche. Like, yeah, you can go out and buy bread if your merchant accepts Gridcoin, but what if most of the transactions on our blockchain were either between network participants, like me giving $5 to a friend, or science consumers, research consumers, having to do with peer-to-peer or publishing scientific articles, stuff like that. That would be the substance. And it doesn't need to be, I'll agree with you to a point that more transactions bring value, but that plateaus, I think, at some point. And other people know much more about this. I would recommend Jimmy Song, anyone in the Bitcoin space, honestly. It's been around for a while. This is what they do. But that's what substance means to me, not so much the amount of money, but what the money is.
I agree with that. I think it's not really necessarily the amount, but it's more of the distribution of it, right? I mean, whether you had a lot or a little going back and forth between only two parties, that really doesn't. Two parties does not really constitute a network the way you would envision it, the way we're talking about, right? I mean, just like if the only person interacting with the federal government was one company, that's not enough to provide validity of the U.S. dollar. It's provided by its pervasiveness, which is not necessarily tied directly to the amount of dollars that are going through, although there's lots of people that would argue otherwise. But it's about the fact that everybody's using it and to conduct transactions, so they're pervasive. But I agree. I like the idea of coming up with specialization of which are types of transactions that actually fit within the coin's ethos, that would are thematic and involve many parties on the network. I think that's definitely valid. It's got to be more than just staking and paying out minting coins for research. That's not. We got to go beyond that. It is another point that I think has to be made. So, yeah.
I think most of us will agree that we have to get Gridcoin out there. It's just how and where. And I think Snip, you wanted to respond a little earlier.
Yeah, no problem. I'm gonna disagree with you guys a little bit.
Get out of here. I'm bad. Yeah. I passed you the mic.
Mute him.
Because so it's all well and good that you want to, say purchase publications or scientific supplies or whatever with Gridcoin. That's great, but that's just the first step of the currency. The currency doesn't stop there. The people that accepted your currency for the supplies need to be able to use it for something, and so your currency doesn't. You can't just say this is going to be used as a science research currency, because people don't just need science research in their lives. They need to be able to use this currency for a wide variety of things. I understand the direction you're going at this, but it's hard for a currency to just be in some little niche.
I agree, and I think I am less susceptible to that concern because I truly believe that we are going to move to a fairly stable multi-currency system where something like atomic swaps or something better comes along in the next 10 years, where it doesn't matter what currency you're using essentially to buy your bread. You can use any currency and it's immediately exchanged for whatever the merchant accepts at that time. So that to me seems like a technological problem more than a growth problem or an outreach problem. But so essentially I would buy bread with Gridcoin, but the merchant would immediately exchange it for Dogecoin, because we all know groceries love Dogecoin, and they would get paid in Doge. But that's not really a transaction that's happening on the Gridcoin network. A transaction sorry, go ahead.
That still requires a closed loop, though. Sure, they exchange Gridcoin for Doge, but at some point, through some series of exchanges, someone needs to be exchanging Doge for Gridcoin, closing this loop, right? Someone has to be selling that Gridcoin for Doge, and someone has to be putting value back into Gridcoin.
Here's
money back into Gridcoin.
So it wouldn't be a Doge GRC pairing. The GRC would be given to the merchant, and then the merchant would probably go through whatever the main chain is working off of, probably Bitcoin Core or Bitcoin Cash at that time. Or Cardano, you're welcome, Barton, go ahead. And so they would take the Gridcoin, sell it for the main chain currency, and then exchange that main chain currency for the currency they want. So it wouldn't be a direct GRC Doge pair, but it's sort of implying side chains or some sort of market pegging to a commodity-based currency like Bitcoin, to give it that sort of feature possibility. But this isn't something that exists, so I don't even know if this is something that's possible.
Yeah, but I do agree with Snips though. It's whenever you say this is going to be exchanged for other currencies, like if I buy bread with Gridcoin, but the store internally, their finances sit on, Bitcoin, right, or Doge, just to have something that's more of a complicated loop back and forth. Somewhat like either an automated system has to do all that, and they lose on the exchange, or they have to wait and do a weekly dump of whatever of all the cryptos they don't want to deal with. I look forward to a future invention or future innovation where a crypto can act something like a credit card, where a store will just have something at the front that says, we accept these credit cards, doesn't matter, just we accept these cryptos, just put it in, we'll handle everything, and so on and so forth. So I think that's what you are looking for when you say the atomic swap, right? It's someone just lists all the ones that they're going to accept and nobody cares.
I think you also raised the specter of the other thing that haunts cryptocurrencies right now, which is the tension between the price of the cryptocurrency and its utility as an actual medium of exchange barter, right, for goods and services. Because I think, look, the U.S. dollar certainly shifts around a bit, but it's a remarkably, at least right now in modern times, recent times, it's a pretty stable currency from a purchasing power parity perspective. So when people go to buy a loaf of bread with the U.S. dollar, they know that, or have this innate sense that inflation is very low, and that what bread cost them last week is pretty much going to be what bread cost them this week. And I think, the idea of multiple cryptocurrencies actually even adds an additional layer of complexity to, okay, well, I did work and I got paid in whatever, and I'm going to then take that hard-earned money and I'm going to go use it just to live. And the question is, what does that mean? And that's when it gets really practical with people. And I think that still right now in the infancy of cryptocurrencies poses a challenge, because the value of cryptocurrencies right now are decidedly not stable. And that causes a lot of problems with the utility of using it for real, barter transactions.
Yeah, I mean, whenever I saw someone like Steam, right? Steam accepted cryptos for a little while, and you had some stores that were accepting cryptos on their main sites. Every time I saw that, I always saw a big potential for loss, right? And a really brave move by a lot of those platforms, because I mean, if you buy like a stove, right, or you buy a car with crypto, and then say that, say you're fast and you'll wait one full day, or like, not a week, you'll wait a day before exchanging those cryptos for the ones that you want or to fiat. There's a chance that crypto drops 20% that night, and you effectively gave away that car or that item for 20% less than you would have normally, right? You just lost that money. And so the instability of the crypto, and the fact that most people don't want it sitting in the crypto you're probably going to exchange it for, right? So there's a lot of potential. I mean, we're getting a little away from what GRC, where the value of it is, and getting into a lot of monetary theory. But I think this is something we're going to eventually have to cross if we want to kind of play with the big boys.
Yep.
Yeah, monetary theory is key to crypto. That's what we are. That's what the blockchain is. I think a main assumption that I'm at least taking for granted when I'm talking is that it's, for everything I've said, the first line should be once the market matures, once the technology comes into fruition, because we're still not there. We're still in the speculative phase, where people are speculating because they're not sure that it's going to be used. But the people who thought it was a Ponzi scheme in 2013 no longer think it's a Ponzi scheme. They are seriously looking at it as an actual currency, not utility tokens so much, but actual currency, a global currency, digital cash, trustless digital cash. They're reading the white paper and thinking, oh, I get it now. So I believe that in a matter of 5 to 10 years, it will be more of a less volatile currency, And at that point, it doesn't matter. The only time a network's price will change, the price of a currency unit will change, is when something happens to that network. So 51% attacks, once things are stable, will be a much bigger deal, because it means that network has failed. Something like, for Gridcoin specifically, if we voted in a malicious BOINC project, that would mean that our process for approving BOINC projects is flawed, and our price would drop significantly for that. For the early days of Gridcoin, we had a BOINC project that was, from my opinion, fairly useless, Bitcoin Utopia, and it skewed a bunch of our stats, and it gave out a lot of Gridcoin for free, but our price still went up during that time. So we are in a spot right now where the network stability, the faith in the network, doesn't actually correlate to a lot. But we'll get to a point where it does. And at that point, you can just buy stuff with these currencies. And the ones with a more valuable network will be the ones that are used more often. And I think the ultimate goal is to get it to the point where people are paid for working in your currency, yeah?
Yeah, and actually, as a quick little aside, just found out the Winklevoss twins Bitcoin ETF was just denied. So, since it is kind of on topic.
Yeah, they'll get there one day. Those brothers never give up.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say I'm surprised, but yeah, so that's, I don't think Bitcoin's doing very well. That happened a couple hours ago, apparently. So
to bring all of this back to the topic, I guess, if network is the value, and I think the things you guys brought up earlier are also relevant. Electricity cost, depreciation, that stuff is relevant to the price and how it might get factored in, but I think it's a very difficult thing to tie to value and make it stable, I guess.
I think the easiest way we can try and think of this, and probably agree on, is so we have trust, right? That is required for value. Ignoring everything else, right? Let's just, put it in a bubble and ignore market value, ignore assets behind it, all of that stuff that kind of creates a quote value, right? I think the other biggest thing that needs to be tied to a currency is currency was created on the concept of helping to make things easier, right? Reduce complexity of trading goods, right? I don't need to trade you 10 apples or so on, because I can just trade you $1, and because I don't have to be worrying about you not wanting apples, right? Like that's how fiat and that's how currency became a thing. So if trading cryptos has any complexity whatsoever to money potentially being lost in transactions, currency, you having to go through several loops, having to worry about a closed loop system, as Snips brought up earlier, where you have to need someone to buy the crypto from you to actually get back to the money that you originally wanted to have. While all of those things remain open and a valid concern, I think it's going to have trouble replacing real currency, because it's you're taking a complicated but easy to use system and replacing it with a complicated system that's complicated to use, especially for people who aren't technically savvy. I think that's the main concern.
To the first part of what you were saying, I think we should take that concept and then direct it towards Gridcoin and ask the question, so then what do we do to make Gridcoin a valuable network, to make it easy to use? But also, I sort of disagree with that, because that's like saying Netflix is too complicated for people to understand. Like, do you understand the protocols that Netflix uses to stream information to your computer? Then do you understand how the information is processed individual? And then do you understand how your brain processes all this? People don't need to understand the technical parts of it, as long as they can use it quickly. And when in the multi-currency economy, you can exchange stuff really quickly, easily. No one will notice, and there's no transaction fees. That's the point of the blockchain.
Yeah, I mean, most transactions between currencies are handled on a credit card for free, or with a small transaction fee, right? Like that just exists. What I'm saying is, some of those systems, some of those things don't really exist in current crypto market today, and or using the crypto is not as easy as just swiping your credit card, right? I'm not saying they have to understand how it works, but I'm saying, when I say a complicated system, I'm saying a complicated to use system. Like it's me walking into a center and being like, hey, do you want Bitcoin, or what system which crypto do you want, and having a different one, and then converting, and then having to worry about, am I the one converting, or are they the one converting? Who has to take that fee, right? Those are all just legitimate concerns that add complexity that turn people away, right? I think we have a valuable network. I really do. Like, if everyone's on Gridcoin or on 3 or 4 cryptos, I think it'd be fine. But we're in a world right now where there's several hundred, right? There's a couple, isn't there over 1,000 different cryptocurrencies?
Tens of thousands if you count tokens.
Yeah. So, I mean, at which point do we draw the line and say, yeah, you're not really worth it? I'm sure every single one of them thinks they're very valid and have a lot of uses. And to be completely honest, a lot of them probably do, right? A lot of them, I mean, there's probably at least 20% or 30% that were probably just made up as cash grabs or whatever. But I mean, even so, if you assume that 5,000, 6,000 tokens and cryptos exist with value, it's hard to imagine a complicated system where there's multiple interconnected exchanges where you'd have to exchange with an exchange, and then eventually get to the crypto you want to get to. That's the one major concern I have with cryptos being adopted as a standard fiat. And I don't expect an answer. But I do think an answer will eventually be made.
All right, then how? I think you made a couple good points about Gridcoin specifically, like the first of all, getting into markets, making it easy to buy and use Gridcoin, like making a smartphone app. I'm trying to bring this into a more practical realm now, because we're wrapping up probably in like 10 minutes. So yeah, we've talked about that stuff before, like a mobile wallet. Snip, I think you've actually brought this up before. You have someone who would accept Gridcoin as a merchant who sells something, but it's too complicated right now. And in the same vein as something like that, making it simpler for people to optimize their blinking based on their hardware sort of stuff. So you both have transaction simplification and participation simplification. I think those would be two very valuable parts of our network to improve on. Are there any other parts of the network that anyone thinks we could improve to bring more value to it? I know what Chocolate's big thing is trying to figure out a closer relationship between flops and reward. I think that would bring a bunch of value to the network, and that ties into a snip what you were talking about earlier about using cost of electricity and those sort of metrics as value indicators.
Yeah, Snip actually in the comment maybe 20 minutes ago mentioned like what was the where do you see Gridcoin in the future? And when we talked about that question at the end of the first episode, I said that it would be really cool if we could get Gridcoin to a place where there is a sort of marketplace between green energy coins and Gridcoins, meaning that we can offset all of the electricity use and all of the carbon emissions with green energy tokens. Actual green energy production, I should say. And so, yeah, and in order to do that, you need flops to GRC. And so, yeah, just wanted to, throw that in.
Yeah, I think that bring up. Go ahead, Goblin.
No, I was just gonna say I think what Chocolate's also working towards is honestly an extremely important step, to be honest, because I think that by having the network have a valid, not even calculation, but comparative method would for that kind of like work to electrical costs and such would allow for a validation of what the value rests at, so that if we're sitting at 45 cents, next year, and that calculation kind of helps prove out that it's like, yes, this is actually around what it should be. It helps to validate that it's going to be safe. It's not going to move too much. Yeah, I know it's kind of a price talk, but I'm just saying it's like it'll have more value because a lot of people will be on it more. And I think that the price stabilization of what Chocolate's doing is an important step in creating more value with the crypto.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, I think. For me, in particular, I'm a stickler for this sort of crap. Price is not value, value is not price. They're very different things, but bringing price stabilization through a flops metric, stable flops metric, would bring value to the network because people would be able to do all the stuff we've been talking about today. I think you're right on with that. Anyone else have any thoughts on that stuff? I think those are, what are they, 3? Mobile wallet, ease of use for transaction, ease of use for BOINC optimization for participation, easier UX essentially, and relationship, better relationship between flops and reward. I think are the 3 main ones we've talked about so far. I think those are great points to keep in the back of all our heads as we're thinking about how to improve Gridcoin in the future. So I think they're great value adders. Are there any others anyone can think of? Well, anyone want to say anything before you wrap it up? Bring up the last point or anything? Then with that, we will wrap it up here. Thank you for joining us for this episode. These are less practical episodes than when we're talking about the protocol and specific improvements like CBR and MRC and all this cool stuff, which will also add a lot of value to our network. But I think they are important discussions to remind us of, when we're talking about the science aspect, remind us why we're here. When we're talking about the value of a network, remind us what the whole space is like, to really step back and just keep things in perspective. So next week, I think we'll try to have a more tangible subject. Who knows? Maybe we'll even be on South Exchange by then, but don't hold your breath.
Yeah, and also, I mean, we'll probably post this on Reddit and such, but kind of like how we were talking about how Chocolate's concept, even though it's not technically fully fleshed out, even though it's not, implementable yet, does add a lot of value for various reasons. If anyone here has any kind of things that they're thinking about, right, that they think might add value, even if it's just a vague idea that you would like to spitball back and forth, let us know. We'll help you put together a proposal for it, right? We'll help you to flush it out and let you know if that's already existed at some point or if that's a really cool idea. So just, we'll even give you the spotlight if you want to use it for talking at one of our weekly things towards the beginning. So, please feel free to reach out. Let us know. Always like to hear new ideas.
Well, awesome, guys. We will see you here next Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern, midnight UTC, Gridcoin Discord server. Yeah, happy crunching, everyone. Have a great weekend.